Hi YouTube, welcome to another edition of Horror Hands, and for this video I'm going to be talking about the top 10 best opening scenes to horror movies. I always think the opening to a horror film is very important. It's how you get people's attention, it's how you grab your audience, and it's kind of how you set the tone for the rest of the movie. So for this video I'm going to go through my top 10 best opening 5 minutes or so. Let's get straight to it. In at number 10 we have Brain Dead, aka Dead Alive, from 1992. Peter Jackson's infamously gory zombie film, which actually starts more like an Italian cannibal film, where we see these adventurers running through this mountainous desert being chased by this kind of indigenous tribe, and they're carrying a crate with some mysterious creature within that. And they manage to get away from the cannibal tribe, but the seemingly main character at the time gets bitten by whatever in the crate, which completely spooks out the rest of the group, who boot him out of the vehicle. And whatever has bitten this guy is causing a rash to form on various parts of his body, which the other guys gleefully start to chop off with a machete. It sort of starts out on the guy's hand and they chop that off, works up to his arm and they chop that off, and then appears on his head, and you see where this is going. And we get a gruesome title card letting us know that we're watching Brain Dead or Dead Alive, depending on where you're from in the world. But it's a pretty brutal, pretty horrifying yet humorous and cartoonish intro, and sets a pretty good precedence for the tone of the rest of the film, really. It's certainly a lively start to the film, and one that gets your attention immediately, and depending on your tendency for gore and bodily dismemberment, will either completely horrify you in the first few minutes or hook you in to what is an amazing gore fest of a horror film. So in at number 10 we have Brain Dead, aka Dead Alive. In at number 9 we have Ghost Ship from 2002. And if you want to see one of the best and most shocking mass death scenes you'll ever see in a movie, check out this one. At the beginning of this film, we're on a sort of like a luxury cruise line or something like that. Everyone's having a wonderful time at this kind of, I don't know, ballroom dance or something like that. And there's a cable that goes wrong and sort of snaps and cuts across the ship, slicing everyone into various pieces. And it's one of those wonderful sort of styles of death where they don't quite realise at first. We get a number of scenes of people looking around aimlessly whilst parts of their body slowly start to lop off and things like that, and it all just results in a very bloody mass of chopped up bodies on the deck. Admittedly, the rest of the film is probably a bit of a come down after that spectacular multiple death set piece, but it is an opening that is sure to stay in the memory and hit you pretty hard, and gives us what must be one of the biggest, earliest kill counts in any horror film. So in at number 9 we have Ghost Ship. In at number 8, and this is the only movie on the list which plays out to a black screen whilst the credits roll, but the ambience to this one is just exquisite. In at number 8 is the opening to Firestarter from 1984. This one, like I say, it's just a simple opening to a film, black screen, standard credits, while we get a faint sort of smoke dancing around in the background. But the opening theme from Tangerine Dream just absolutely makes this. It's a beautiful soundtrack throughout, but just that opening to Firestarter is so beautiful and so captivating. I just love it. And the first time I ever watched Firestarter, I was actually sort of making a drink or making something to eat whilst the movie started. And as it started and that scene kicked in and Tangerine Dream came on, I actually stopped what I was doing and stood and watched the whole of the Firestarter intro from start to finish, just because I was so taken in by that opening music. It's one of the most beautiful ways to open a horror film, and yeah, I just love it. I actually listen to that Tangerine Dream soundtrack quite a bit. So for this one, very much less is more, but it's a beautiful way to open a film. So in at number 8 is Firestarter. In at number 7, we have The Shining from 1980. Another really beautiful opening to a film, but one that, as beautiful as it is also very effectively ominous. In this one, we're treated to some beautiful scenery as the camera meanders high up above the lakes and the trees and the mountains until it takes us eventually to the Overlook Hotel, almost as if we're being spirited away, either wantingly or reluctantly, towards this supernatural place. And as great as the scenery looks, as beautiful as that countryside and the lake looks, the music in this, I think, is really what sets the tone. Again, I use that word ominous. It's such a frighteningly ominous soundtrack that plays out as again we take that aerial journey towards the Overlook Hotel. The music itself is really unsettling and has those weird, faint, distant screams and wails in the background, which is just really terrifying. It's an interesting dichotomy between, as I say, what is a really nice-looking, picturesque setting, yet you can feel there's an undercurrent of something not quite right and something kind of supernatural abound, perhaps. Really great way to open the movie, and it's one that I always think about. And from the moment The Shining starts, I just get a strange feeling, thanks to all those elements from those opening credits. So in at number 7, we have The Shining. In at number 6, we have A Nightmare on Elm Street from 1984. Interesting opening, this one. In this one, we get kind of a micro screen, a screen within the screen, where we see a sort of a dark, dusty figure shuffling around a boiler house. This would, of course, go on to be Freddy Krueger. And we sort of see him constructing the now famous razor glove. And you don't really see too much. It's all a bit dark and that kind of thing. But I always found that intro quite fascinating. Like, in kind of a nerdy sense, I was really interested to actually see the construction of the glove and what Freddy actually did to put it together. Even though it's quite rudimentarily made and kind of bolted together, I just found that really interesting. It's also a great scene in that it doesn't really tell you anything or say anything, yet sets the scene really well. And then, of course, the last moment when the glove kind of comes out and stretches across the screen and we get the title card, that was a really cool way to start the movie. So yeah, an interesting one that I've always been drawn to. And like I say, just that quick sort of knocking up of the razor glove, I always found quite satisfying in a strange way. So in at number 6, we have A Nightmare on Elm Street. In at number 5, we have The Fog from 1980. And if you want a masterclass in how to set the scene in an expositional terms, then look no further than The Fog. A great way to open the movie. The always reliable John Houseman sat around the campfire telling ghost stories to kids, and in the opening of the movie he goes into the story of Antonio Bay and how the ship was drawn to the rocks and everybody drowned, but it's said that the ghosts of the sailors would come back on the 21st of April to take their ghostly revenge on the town. As he tells the tale, the clock chimes in the background to signify midnight, to which John Houseman exclaims, "It is midnight on the 21st of April." Just brilliantly setting up the plot for the movie. As he does that, the camera rises up and we get a very kind of dark and gloomy look at Antonio Bay, whilst John Carpenter's The Fog makes its way out there onto the screen. It sets such a great tone for the movie, lets you know exactly what's going on, does it in a real kind of spooky, effective way, and just kind of really sets that kind of morose, mellow tone that the fog tends to have running through it. That kind of opening 5 minutes with John Houseman talking, like, I could watch that scene alone on repeat. It is such a great way to start a movie. So in at number 5, we have The Fog. In at number 4, we have Night Beast from 1982. Just a personal favourite of mine, a guilty pleasure here. And this for me is just exactly how you do it if you just want to get things going, throw the monster straight out there and have chaos ensue from minute 1. I've talked about this movie before, but Night Beast, it starts, the spaceship lands in the woods, the Night Beast creature is straight off the ship and he's running around the woods, disintegrating people with a laser gun or ripping out people's intestines. We get everything from just like silly, campy sci-fi to kind of gory 80s B-movie in the space of 5-10 minutes, and it's absolutely glorious. I remember watching Night Beast for the first time, and as my younger self thinking, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen, because there was no kind of accounting for any kind of build-up or characterization or kind of seemingly obligatory talking or anything like that. It was literally Night Beast action from the moment this movie starts, and I absolutely love it. I could watch Night Beast anytime because it's just so mindlessly entertaining. So in at number 4, we have Night Beast. In at number 3, we have Scream from 1996. Still one of the scariest opening scenes to a horror film that I can think of. Really well done. And this one used to hit really hard because when I was a kid and when I was growing up, I actually never used to like to answer the phone. Like, it really made me anxious to answer the phone. I mean, now I do it for work every day, so it's not a problem. But yeah, when Scream came around and that scene plays out the way it does, that did not do my phobia of answering the phone any good. And it's such a well done scene that the way it elevates and escalates is just really, really, really good. We of course see Drew Barrymore. She gets a seemingly harmless wrong number phone call, but of course isn't, and she gets called repeatedly and just terrorized over and over again by this unknown assailant on the phone. And watching it more now I'm older and a big horror movie fan, it's kind of entertaining as well because it's all based around like horror movies. Like, he's asking a horror film questions and questions about Friday the 13th and things like that. So I get more of an entertaining thrill from that scene nowadays. But when I first watched that years ago, man, that scene absolutely terrified me. And like I say, I still think it's done really well. The way it's shot, the way it's built up, the way Wes Craven paces, those first few minutes are just fantastic. And the fact that it was Drew Barrymore, big star at the time, what happens to her in the end of that opening scene is really shocking. And yeah, one of the most memorable openings to a horror film, certainly for me. So in at number 3, we have Scream. In at number 2, we have Jaws from 1975. Again, if you want an example of how to open a movie where you grab the audience by the throat and make them pay attention, Jaws is the one. Still, I think the scariest moment in the movie, the first 5 minutes, the death of Chrissy Watkins, is so frightening, like on a primitive level. The scariest shots for me is just seeing her, head and shoulders above the water and not seeing what's below her, but knowing what's below her, and just the way it plays out in your imagination is, oh gosh, it's really strong stuff. Great performance by Susan Backlinie, who played Chrissy Watkins. It's frighteningly realistic. I know Spielberg wanted a much more extravagant opening with the shark jumping out and all this kind of stuff, but we all know the shark didn't work, so we got this much more low-key but infinitely more terrifying opening to the movie. And yeah, just a perfect opening for what that movie is. And yeah, it's as I say, it's the moment in the film, no matter anything else that goes on in there. Those first 5 minutes, I still kind of, my toes still curl when I watch that and I see Chrissy being pulled down and all the awful screaming and things like that. So yeah, in at number 2 is Jaws. And in at number 1, the best opening 5 minutes to a horror film. And you might be a bit surprised by this choice, but honestly, go back and watch this scene. It is absolutely fantastic. Number 1 on this list is Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. At the beginning of this film, Jason is dead and buried, but long-suffering Tommy Jarvis can't accept this, so he goes to the cemetery and digs up Jason's body to be sure. Ignore that questionable logic and you have one of the greatest openings to a horror film here ever. The setup of this is just like, it's just everything I look for in horror. It's fantastic. Takes place in a dark, gloomy graveyard while it's raining. They dig up Jason's body. He's like zombified and everything. He looks awful. There's maggots and worms all over him. He proceeds to like ram some railings through his body, and then the lightning strikes and brings Jason back to life. So there's almost an element of like gothic vintage Frankenstein level horror here as Jason is reanimated by the lightning, in which he comes out the grave. He looks awesome as he's coming out the ground, still full of worms and maggots. Kills the guy that Tommy Jarvis is with, and then puts on his hockey mask. And then we even get the James Bond style Jason walking across the screen and slashing at the audience. It's so cool. It's just so well done. It's got that kind of knowing, self-referential element to it. Jason's out there in the first few minutes with his hockey mask, killing people. He looks awesome. And yeah, for me, it's the perfect way to open a movie. One of the best moments in a Friday the 13th movie, and it takes place in the first few minutes. It's great. I commend them for opening that movie in such an awesome way. So in at number 1, we have Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. So there we go, guys. That is my top 10 best opening 5 minutes to horror movies. Let me know what you think about that list, if you agree with it. If not, let me know what some of the best openings are for you. I'd be really interested to know. So thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for more videos.